From Nate Diaz coming to the PFL to fight Jake Paul, to Azamat Karifov making his mark in the new super fight division, these are the fighters that could follow Francis Ngannou's lead and join the PFL. Let's start with Nate Diaz, because it looks like a PFL bout could be on the cards for him. And it's not just me who's saying this. Jake Paul is the one who wants to make it happen. Now, if you didn't know, the problem child has also signed a huge deal with the PFL alongside Ngannou. But here's the thing, this is Paul's first foray into actual MMA fighting since he's been kind of doing his whole boxing thing. Oh, and don't worry, he hasn't signed an exclusivity deal either, so we will see him in the boxing ring at some point. As a matter of fact, he's fighting Nate Diaz in August 2023 for his next boxing fight. But here's the kicker. He says that he wants to have a second mega fight with Nate, except that this one would be in the octagon. Speaking in a PFL promotional footage, he talked about how he's offered Nate Diaz a 2-fight deal, where they box and then they fight in the PFL Smart Cage 6 months later. Yeah, he wants to beat the guy in his own sport. What's more, even though there are reports that Nate has turned down the fight, we are also hearing conflicting things from other sources. I mean, even the PFL president Ray Sefo is down to make it happen, saying it would be wonderful to see Jake fight Nate in the PFL cage. Also, hey, even though this does seem like a one-off thing, Diaz could be enticed by the idea of PFL. After all, he has seen and done it all in the UFC. That said, why would he choose the PFL in the first place? Like, what's so attractive about it? Well, for that, all we have to do is look at Francis Ngannou's insane contract. Seriously, not only is this one of the most significant deals in combat sports history, but it's also gonna change the way we think about MMA and the UFC forever. Now, if you don't already know, the Predator left the UFC not because of money, but because he felt like the promotion wasn't treating its fighters well. Like, there was no such thing as health benefits. And let's be fair, the pay for some of the low-profile fighters is also horrendous. The PFL, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of that. Here, Ngannou's got a multi-million-dollar contract that doesn't even restrict him from boxing. I mean, that sort of freedom is unheard of in the world of MMA. What's more, he's also managed to negotiate better deals for other fighters, including the fact that anyone who comes up against him will make a guaranteed $2 million. Oh, and let's not forget the PPV clause, which basically says that fighters get 50% of the money from a pay-per-view. That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this stuff though, because Francis Ngannou is actually going to have some creative control over the company too. Yep, the former heavyweight champ is gonna have a role on the PFL's Global Athlete Advisory Board, something that's gonna allow him to scout and recruit future champs. And he's also gonna be a chairman for PFL Africa. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of this? In fact, there are fighters who are already leaving their promotions to potentially move over to the PFL, like Mike Perry. Now, this guy is an absolute veteran of the sport, and has really made a name for himself in the bare-knuckle fighting championship over the years. But apparently, he thinks that's just too easy. So even though he loves beating people up, and that too without gloves, he says it's about time he moved on to other challenges. Oh, and yeah, he obviously wants to make some more money at this point in his career too. And well, after he absolutely brutalized Luke Rockhold at BKFC 41, he said he's gonna leave the promotion and become a free agent for the time being. Of course, Perry still mentioned that he loves everyone in the Bare Knuckle Championship, and also thanked fans for their support over the years. However, he felt like his fight against Rockhold came to an end way too soon. And yeah, it kinda did, as Rockhold gave up a minute and 15 seconds into round 2. In fact, Perry went as far as to say that he was actually shocked, because for him, the hard work he put into the fight definitely wasn't worth the anticlimactic end he got. Plus, he also said that he's still one of the roughest, toughest sons of a gun on the planet, so there's gotta be a better challenge out there for him. And well, what better way for the PFL to make its mark in the combat sports market than bringing in one of the most brutal punchers out there? I mean, this seems like a match made in heaven. Although, there's one guy who might not be happy about this move, and that is Luke Rockhold. Why? Well, because it looks like he could be heading over to the PFL too. Yeah. Imagine turning up to your new promotion, thinking you've made it and are gonna dominate some newbies, only to find the menace who destroyed you standing there. But hey, even though Rockhold didn't have the best fights during his BKFC debut, he's still one of the most accomplished MMA fighters out there. I mean, there's a reason why he won the UFC middleweight championship back in the day. Although you're probably thinking, wait, didn't he just sign with the BKFC? Why would he go to another promotion after just one fight? Well, you see, when Rockhold negotiated a release from his UFC contract in January 2023, he said he'd come out of retirement to compete for another MMA organization. And not sure if you know, but BKFC isn't exactly MMA. Not to mention, the PFL itself is very open to the idea of letting its fighters compete in PPV events and then go do their boxing fights in between, which would be the dream scenario for someone like Luke Rockhold. Oh, and hey, maybe he'll fare better against Mike Perry in the octagon as well. That sort of environment is bread and butter after all. Plus, the PFL will benefit from having another former UFC champ join their ranks, boosting their brand reputation even more. That being said, Rockhold isn't the only guy who's pivoted to boxing, but still wants to remain in MMA. Anthony Pettis wants to be in the octagon too. As a matter of fact, he actually competed in the Professional Fighters League for a couple of seasons, so he already knows what's up. Plus, obviously, he's got years of experience in the UFC too. I mean, the dude has been all over the place and is one of the best fighters out there. Not to mention, he's coming off the heels of an incredibly successful boxing debut against the former 4-division champ, Roy Jones Jr. Like, imagine beating one of the best ever to do it in their own sport. His confidence must be sky high. But even though his foray into boxing has been very successful, Pettis says he's still got some unfinished business in mixed martial arts. During his post-fight press conference after beating Jones, he talked about how he's still got some MMA left in him. Although if he does return, he wants to move up to 170 pounds and compete, because for him, competing at 155 pounds in the PFL just did not feel good. In fact, he said that even training for that weight class didn't go according to plan. And yeah, it shows in his results as he lost 4 out of 5 fights in the PFL, including a double loss against Stevie Ray. But maybe things will be different at 170. With that said, if the PFL really wants to make a pop and recruit an elite talent that no one else has managed to nab yet, they have to sign Azamat Karafov. I mean, the Russian's been around in MMA for almost a decade at this point. And with 0 losses to his name in over a dozen bouts, it's insane that he hasn't been picked up by the UFC already. Seriously, the dude held the ACA Flyweight Championship for years, and no one could take it off him. Well, at least until he decided to vacate it himself and become a free agent. And now he's looking for his next big adventure. Of course, not a lot has been said about where he's heading, since he's not exactly the most high-profile fighter out there. But if Ngannou wants to hit the ground running with his new job as a PFL scout, then this would be a home run signing for him. I mean, between July 2020 and October 2022, Karafov was considered one of the top 10 flyweight fighters in the world by Fight Matrix. So if he bulks up a bit, he could be the next big thing that could just elevate the PFL superfight division to new heights. Well, there you have it. From Azamat Karafov making his mark in the new superfight division, to Nate Diaz coming to fight Jake Paul, those were the fighters that could follow Francis Ngannou's lead and join the PFL.